Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So I'm going to be talking about the books that I have loved over the years. I have shared some of these favorites in other videos in passing, but I wanted to talk a little bit more about each one because they are all fantastic books and definitely ones that were well loved by me at some point in my life. And I hope that I can maybe encourage you to read them or to recommend them to your students or to your kids because they are all fantastic. So the first one I have definitely mentioned, and that is Wacky Wednesday, and this is a book that I read as a child. My mother would read this to me every single Wednesday, so much so that we could only read it on Wednesdays, and it's fantastic. It is an illustrated children's book, and basically the premise of the book is that this kid wakes up and realizes that this day isn't like every other day, that things are kind of odd. And so throughout the book there are all kinds of different things that happen, so each one has like a number of things that are wrong on that page, and so you have to find the things that are wrong. So for instance, this one says 7 things are wacky that day, and it's things like, for instance, this house doesn't have a wall. And I think, oh, that's on a different one. Oh, instead of tires, there's this guy's feet. So it's all kinds of just silly, wacky things. And for a kid, that's so much fun, and I really enjoyed it. I had to find every single wacky thing on the page before we could go to the next part of the book, which is why we could only read it on Wednesdays. But yeah, it's definitely a really cute story and definitely something that is fun to do with your kids. So the next book I don't actually have, and it's really a series, and it was really the first book that I read independently outside of school or just on my own in general, and it was the Boxcar Children series. And this is about, I think there are 4 kids, and in the first book they're living in a boxcar and this family finds them and sort of adopts them, and each book is a different mystery sort of thing that they get into, and so it's always something kind of weird or quirky. The one that I remember the most out of all of them is that they found like a secret room in this attic that had like all these toys or something. Like they could see this octagon window from a tree, and then they discovered that this house had a secret room in its attic. And it was just like things like that that made a really curious child even more curious, and they were so charming and fun to read, and I really enjoyed them. So the next one is also a series, and that is the Time Traveler series by Caroline B. Cooney, and it starts out with, oops, they're backwards. It starts out with Prisoner of Time, and then goes on to Both Sides of Time, Out of Time, and For All Time, and they are... So I had to actually go back and look it up because it's been so long since I've read these that I knew sort of the basic premise, but I wasn't sure how it all unfolded. And basically it's this girl who goes to, I don't know if she's on a field trip or she's just sort of exploring this area where this old house is, and she falls through time and ends up back in like the 1800s, and she meets a boy and they fall in love, and that's how the story sort of continues. And it's all, from what I remember, she falls forward and back out of time a couple of times throughout this series, and I want to say one of the book explores a side character in the first couple of books, and it sort of explores her story, so it's sort of like a companion book. But yeah, it's weird. But it's really, it was just really fun, and I think this is part of what got me into historical fiction, because it's definitely got some historical fiction aspects, and definitely, you know, the time travel thing is a little bit magical realism, fantasy kind of thing, and it was fun to read these. And I remember these being some of my favorite Caroline B. Cooney books to read when I was in middle school, and I loved Caroline B. Cooney. She was an author I read a ton of books by. And this is definitely the series that I still own, obviously, and am really fond of. So the next one is also a series. Clearly I had something for series when I was a kid. This one is definitely a no-brainer, and that is the Harry Potter series. I didn't go get all of them because there are 7. and I didn't want to carry them. But I loved this series, and I think everybody knows what it's about. I almost didn't read this, and I think eventually I would have no matter what, but I thought they were just for kids, and I was like, I don't want to read those. And then my parents got them for me for Christmas, the first 3, and I started reading them, and I just fell in love because I just think that this is a great series of books for someone to grow up with, and it was great for me to grow up with because it has such a strong female character, and it teaches great themes of love and friendship and loyalty and good triumphing over evil, and it's great. Everything about the Harry Potter series makes me so happy and so nostalgic, and I think everyone should read them. So the next one I have definitely talked about, and that is Ready Okay by Adam Cadre. I believe this is the only novel that Adam Cadre has ever written. I know he has some short stories on his website that are really fun to read. There are some that pertain to this book, and this was definitely my favorite book in high school. I remember all of my friends read this, and we, would repeat the one-liners to each other, and there's still some of the one-liners that are like part of my vocabulary now, because it's just, I don't know, maybe it's because those were like your formative years, and you remember things and inside jokes, and yeah, I still say some of them though. But it's funny, and it's sad, and it's heartbreaking, and it's real, and that's what I loved about this book, is that you really get attached to the characters. It is narrated by a teenage boy, and he's a twin, and you sort of get to know his family and his friends, and all of these things that can really happen to teenagers, and some of them are horrible. And at the very beginning of the book, the first line basically tells you that something tragic is going to happen, because it says that he went down to the DMV unburdened by the knowledge that within, I think it's like 3 months, everyone that he knew and cared about would be dead. And it's tragic. It really is. But at the same time, it is so funny. This book will have you laughing yourself to tears. But it is definitely the one book that when I was finished, I don't know, I was like non-functional for like an entire day because I was so upset over the ending of this book. And not because I didn't like it, but because I was so attached to the characters that it just broke my heart. And I so want so many other people to read this because I want to talk about it. There is one main theme in it that I keep hesitating to say this is what it's about because it is a spoiler, but it's such an important topic, and this book is full of important topics, and I just want more people to read it. So the next one is a book that I found sort of my summer after my junior year of high school going into my senior year, and it is called Empress of the World, and it's by Sarah Ryan. And I forget how I found this book, but it's about a girl named Nicola who goes to like a summer camp at a college, which non-coincidentally, I went to a summer camp at the college I then attended, which was a women's college, and this is basically like a women's camp, and like that makes it sound like a prison camp. No, it's like a girls' camp, and Nicola, the main character, meets a girl and basically falls in love with her and like realizes that she has feelings for women, and it's like a sort of a self-discovery book, and it was beautiful and it was heartbreaking. I don't know why at that time of my life I loved beautiful, heartbreaking books, but I did. And this just spoke to me so much because I went through a very similar situation as a teenager. And so it was something that I could relate to, and that just, it was just beautiful. And this is definitely one of those books that is perfect for an LGBT teen that needs to see themselves in a book, because this is so real and so wonderful. Alright, so the next one I have definitely talked about, and that is the Bell Canto by Ann Patchett. And this book is one that a friend of mine gave me in college. She lent me this book, actually, and sorry, Foster, you're never getting this back. Sorry. I'm one of those. So this book is about it's a group of people that are at like a birthday party that's an opera for this like foreign dignitary, and I believe it's in South America, and the opera house gets taken hostage, and so all of the people that were at this party are then held hostage, and it's sort of about, you learn about the hostages and their situation, and you see the sort of relationships that develop and all of that, and it's so beautiful and just fascinating, and I am just always so impressed with Ann Patchett's writing and her character development and her world building. It's fantastic, and this is one of the best examples of that, and I just cannot rave about this book enough. So at some point I got the grand idea that I was going to read The Count of Monte Cristo, and this is a big honkin' book. I don't know what possessed me to read it, but I am thrilled that I did because it's fantastic. And this was the first book of Alexander Dumas's that I actually ever read, and I'm glad I started with it. I loved Three Musketeers and the rest of the D'Artagnan romances, and I've loved so many other books I've read of his, but this by far is the best. It is incredible. It is one of those examples of how every detail matters. So it's a huge book. I mean, you'd think that some of this is just fluff, or that you could read the abridged and not miss anything, but trust me, you cannot. It is crazy how even so much as like the details about buttons on a particular jacket that he wears are relevant to the story. It's mind-blowing. What he did with this is just, I don't know, there are not words. This is definitely my favorite book, hands down. I read it, I want to say like 3 or 4 years ago, something like that. I cannot remember. But I read it after college, just on my own, decided to read it, and I flew through it. It's crazy because it's such a huge book, but it reads so much faster than you would think it does. And if you aren't familiar with the story of the Count of Monte Cristo, it's about a sailor who basically has everything in the world going for him. He thinks he's getting ready to get a promotion. He has this girl that he loves and that loves him back, and he proposes to her, and on the night of their like proposal dinner, or it might even be like their sort of rehearsal dinner, right before he's about to marry her, he's arrested and put in prison for life by these other people who were jealous of him, basically. And the story is about, you know, what happens to him while he's in prison and how he escapes, and then what he does after that to sort of seek revenge on those people that took away his entire life from him. And it's fascinating. And it is the ultimate revenge story. It's like every other revenge story, there's some part of it came from this book, I swear. It's just, this is the original revenge story, and it's definitely, definitely worth the time and energy to read. So the next one is definitely quite beloved on BookTube, and it would be a BookTube made me buy it purchase, except that I got it in a blind date with a book purchase, so I didn't actually know I was buying it, but I would have bought it anyways, and that is Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. And this is just such an entertaining book. It's full of 80s pop culture and video game references, and it's got a quest in it, and I love me a book with a quest. So it follows this character, Wade, who lives in sort of, it's like in the future, it's not quite dystopian, but it's like a society where everything is, Earth is pretty much gone to this terrible wayside where everybody lives in a virtual reality. And the guy who created virtual reality dies and leaves his fortune to the person who can basically unlock this quest that he sends them on. And it is crazy, and there are twists and turns both inside the virtual reality world and outside in the real world, and it was just so fun to read, and I didn't want to put it down. And I'm pretty sure this is one of those books I stayed up really, really late into the night reading because I wanted to finish it and know how it ended. So yeah, it's definitely something that I would recommend to anyone, even if you're not into 80s pop culture or video games. It's just fun. So I'd love to hear what some of your favorite books are so that, you know, I can put them on my wish list and make my TBR grow even more. And I would love to hear what you think of any of these books if you've read them. And that's about it. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you next time. Bye!